This next chart that I want to talk about here is the Pareto chart, and it's one of my favorite charts to work with, but I don't actually see a lot of people using it. On the surface, this chart is going to look like a combination chart where we have a bar and we have a line, but the way that the data is being presented and displayed to you, the end user, is what makes it really interesting. But before we get too deep into the Pareto chart, let's talk a little bit more about our data. If we think about our data, we have the total dollar amounts being purchased, but what if we wanted to understand that in relation to the total purchases across all of those different categories? To help us understand this and visualize it a little bit better, we're going to create this Pareto chart, and to get us started, let's go ahead and copy some of that pivot table data, and we're going to bring it down to this new section, and we're going to give it some new header names. Next, I want to go ahead and create a totals row, and we can easily do that using the sum function that you learned earlier in the lessons. Now, to understand how much this category here makes up the total spend across all the categories, we want to create another column, and we're going to call this % of total spend. To get the value that we're looking for here, all we have to do is type the equal sign, and then we'll select our column for the total, and then what we want to do is divide that by the actual total amount at the bottom here. But before we get too far along, what we're going to want to do is drag this formula down for all these other rows, but you know that's going to be a problem because we didn't lock into that total cell. So to solve that problem, we're just going to put this $ in front of the totals value here on that row, and that's going to solve our problem. Now that we have the formula fixed, let's go over here and let's change this value to be displayed as a %. And with that looking good, now we can simply go over to our cell with our formula and value in it, and we can drag this down for all the other rows. So this is one way that you can look at your data and you can try to understand what is the percentage of each value as a contribution to the total value of all the purchases that happen. More specifically, when we look at the household row here, we can see that it is 18% of the total spend. While this is good, what if we wanted to see where the bulk of all the purchases are being made? To do this, we'd have to look at a bunch of different values here, and maybe we'd have to do some mental math to get a fair idea of which categories are really contributing to most of the spend that we see. Now that sounds like a little bit of work, and Excel can actually make this a heck of a lot easier in an automated way, and we do this by using the Pareto chart. To do this, let's go ahead and select the category group, and then let's go ahead and select those item totals. With the data selected, let's go up to the Insert menu, and then we'll click on the histogram icon here, and then we'll click on this second chart icon, which is going to be the Pareto chart. With this new chart being displayed, this looks like a combination chart, and in fact it is, but when you think about this, we only selected one set of data, unlike in the last example when we created a combo chart, we selected two different sets of data. Now there's nothing wrong with this here, this is just Excel doing a little bit of extra work on the back end that you can't necessarily see. So since this is looking good, let's go ahead and explain how to read the Pareto chart. The first thing that we see here is we have these bars, and these bars are going to be the total dollar amount value for the categories, just like we saw in our previous chart. The next thing that we see here is this line, and when we look at the household bar here and we look at that line, we see it's at the 18% mark. Now this is exactly what we saw before when we were manually calculating this, and this is saying that household makes up 18% of the total sales. But now if we go one bar over, we can see that we have this tech group here, and when we look at this dot and where the line is, it's actually at the 31% mark. So how did we get there? When we look at our previous data, we had household at 18%, and then we had tech at 13%. So when you add up the 18% and 13%, you get 31% in total. Essentially what this is saying is that these two categories here combined make up 31% of the total sales. If we keep looking at all these bars across the Pareto chart and we look where that line says 80% at apparel, this is going to help us understand the data a little bit better. So let's talk about what this is trying to explain. What this Pareto chart is trying to show us here is that these first 5 categories make up 80% of all the sales, and then these remaining 6 categories make up the remaining 20% of our sales. This can be a really useful chart and a really useful tool because if you are trying to focus in on which are the best products that we want to invest in, or maybe which are the products that we don't care if we discontinue, this can help display that information for you. For example, let's say that we're working on an e-commerce website and we want to make a change to some of the product categories. If, for example, we were making a change to some of the household products, by looking at this Pareto chart, we know that any mistakes that we make could have a really significant impact because there's a lot of people that are buying the household products. However, if we were making a risky change to our website and we're not really sure how customers are going to react, maybe we want to pick a different category group where there's not a whole lot of purchase activity happening. So that's it about Pareto charts, and I hope that when you're working as a data analyst, you'll try to use them a bit more because they are super helpful. I just don't see a lot of people working with them. If you want to learn more, click on the link in the notes section to see more information on those Pareto charts.